and welcome back to Bookish Theories. Today we catch up with the team breaking down their 4th-season series according to the Dark Moon storyline. I actually already did a video on Samidare when it came out a few months ago, so if you want to check that out you can find it linked in the description down below together with my Dark Moon playlist and my team playlist. Today, however, I actually want to do something a bit different. I want to talk about Samidare, Aoarashi, Yukiakari, and also a bit about Deer Hunter, but following the lore portrayed in the Dark Moon special on Weavers. Overall, this is the second Weaver special dedicated to the franchise, with the first being dedicated to Enhypen and the Blood Altar, but this time the 6-part special is all about Team and the Grey City. That part of the story ended with the pack coming together and then leaving Graville behind after defeating the Red Hood sisters, which were vampires with psychic powers that almost destroyed the entire town. The Dark Moon special portrays the events that occur as this is taking place, so before we dive in, let me break down the timeline for you. So as you know, canonically the Grey City happens 20 years before the events of the Blood Altar, so the story is set in the early 2000s. According to this post, the pack leaves Graville on September 3rd, 2000. This means that Team's Dark Moon special takes place over the course of the same year, with each title track essentially representing one of the seasons. Samidare takes place in spring, so right after Giri died and the pack has come together. Aoarashi instead is set in summer, as the wolves take their first trip together as a pack. In terms of timeline, I think that both songs are set sometime between chapter 53 and chapter 54 of the Grey City. In 53, Khan convinces Man, Camille and Ruslan to join the pack, but in 54 they leave Graville already, which happens on September 3rd, 2000. This means that spring and summer are both condensed in the period of time between these two chapters, after which the Grey City ends as fall is approaching. A month later, Khan writes a letter to Mika on a night of full moon, which is why in Jugoya we see the wolves in the woods. Finally, Yukiakari is set in winter, 3 months after they left Graville, with part of the video also having a time jump that I'll talk about in a second. At the time I'm recording this, the music video for Deer Hunter has been released as well, but as we see right at the end, the song portrays a part of the lore that will take place in the upcoming new installment Dark Moon The Witch of Yerasa. Today I want to focus on the Dark Moon special, so I won't dive that deep into that. I want to save the full breakdown for when we know more about this new part of the story, but since Yerasa has been mentioned in Yukiakari as well, I will circle back to it right at the end and give you some of my thoughts. Now, let's start off with Samidare and take a look at what is happening according to the lore. The chapters of the special dedicated to spring are called Wet from an Early Monsoon, and at this point the pack is still adjusting to the new reality they are experiencing. Giri, the alpha of Najak, Tile and Enzi's pack as well as Khan's mentor has died as a result of the battle against the Red Hood sisters. Khan is now the alpha, and the pack has grown consistently since. Initially it was just Khan, Najak, Tile and Enzi, just like in real life. Then the twins Luca and Louis joined because they discovered that Khan is a literal Khan, that is, the leader of the lycanthropes chosen by Varger, the wolf god himself. Eventually Khan invited Man, Camille and Ruslan to join as well because they lost everything as a result of the Red Hood sisters. In the Grey City they were both victims and pawns of the vampires because they were hypnotized by the sisters and forced to do their bidding without their consent. Now they're learning to function again as free wolves, but the dynamics within the pack still need some adjusting. The Samidare section of the special begins a month after Giri's death. Khan and the original members of the pack are still grieving his passing, but the one who is the most affected is Tile, who still writes him letters to let him know how they are doing. As the cherry blossoms bloom in the spring, Tile remembers that those were Giri's favorite flowers, and as he comes to terms with the fact that he's not coming back, he wonders if the pack will be alright even without him. This is honestly a fair question because at this point in time they argue on a daily basis. Man, Camille and Ruslan were hypnotized into siding with the vampires, so there is still a lot of tension between them and the rest of the pack, especially considering that their actions contributed to Giri's death. As we see in Samidare, Enzi and Camille especially fight all the time. On the one hand, Enzi is still grieving, so he kinda takes it out on the other, who was his enemy until recently. On the other though, Camille is super defensive. He keeps insisting that it's not their fault that Giri died, so they should shut up about it and get on with their life. Camille crosses the line so often that even Man confronts him about it. He tells him to keep it down because now they're in the same pack and they have to coexist, but Camille doesn't want to hear it. He lashes out even against his own brothers, so much so that Ruslan gets scared and Man gets even more frustrated. In order to alleviate the tension, Luca proposes to have a picnic all together so they can chill and take a breath. They all accept, some more enthusiastically than others, but the outing has the opposite effect. The angry ones get even angrier, and when they play basketball, the tensions rise even more during the game. Khan was hoping they could work things out in the court, maybe release some bitterness, chill out for a second, but Enzi ends up making things worse. The more he watches the newcomers, the more he cannot fathom how people as strong as them could have fallen victims of the vampire vampires. He's looking for a scapegoat basically, because every time that he looks at them, the image of Giri's death replays in his head. On a rational level, he knows that it's not their fault and they too were victims, but when emotions take over, all he wants is to blame them for everything. When him and Najak see that Tal still carries the group photo with him, things get even more emotional, and the game concludes with Enzi angrily breaking the backboard. As they head home, Tal and his picture end up being the source of a huge fight, which is also what we see in the video. The newcomers accidentally bump into Tal, making him trip. As a result, the picture ends up on the ground, and since it's starting to rain, the photo gets ruined. This is the final straw for the original pack. Enzi gets mad, but it's Najak the one who draws the first punch. In the video we see him hitting Mahan, Fuma's Carter, but in the comic he actually punches Camu, Joe's Carter, because he accidentally stepped on the picture. Either way, Najak's attack causes Enzi and the newcomers to do the same, so you have the 5 of them pulling each other's hair, Khan, Luca and Louis trying to break the fight, and Tal crying in the corner. All of a sudden, however, the rain stops, the sun comes through the clouds, and a rain of cherry blossoms begins to fall on them. That's Giri's favorite flower, so they see that as a sign to stop fighting and allow themselves to embrace the spring. Paradoxically enough, the only way for them to move on is for them to stop. They have to stop fighting, stop blaming each other, stop ignoring their grief. Embracing the spring means to welcome a rebirth and accept a new season of life, so Samidare ends with them stopping the fight and literally acknowledging this change of season. With Aoarashi, we move on to the summer of 2000, and in this season the pack goes on their first trip together. At this point they're still living in Graville, but Luca and Louis are actively looking for a new place for them to settle in. Under their guidance, the pack arrives to the port city of Maruhama, but as they divide into pairs for a recon, Ruslan and Tal dream to go on holiday. Even if the vampires might still be around, the two of them long for adventure, they want to have fun, which, to be fair, is not an unpopular opinion. This trip to Maruhama is supposed to be their first vacation as a pack of 9, but Luca and Louis, who organized it, wander off all the time to mind their business. Enzi encourages Khan to start behaving like the alpha he is and go talk to them, but when the twins eventually show up, they have bad news. During their recon, they found traces of vampires not far from there, so Maruhama is not the right place for them to stay long term. Still, for the time being, the two of them suggest to go rest at an inn they saw earlier. They're so insistent about it that Najak actually side-eyes them, he doesn't trust them, and when they get there, his intuition proves to be correct. The inn turns out to be an abandoned house after destroyed by a recent attack. Khan immediately clocks the scent of other wolves, and it seems that they've recently fought against vampires. Among the debris, however, they also find a board with a logo on it, and this logo is actually the reason why Luca and Louis are so interested in that place. That symbol is the symbol of Wolfsbane, which was the holy order of knights that guards the blood altar. Bear in mind, the blood altar is located in the main temple of Vargar the wolf god, so back in the day it was the most sacred location of the kingdom of Vargar. If you want to know more about it, you can actually watch my breakdown of the Priestess Oath, which was one of the versions of Enhypen's memorabilia. The book talks about the different tribes of the kingdom, their cultures and beliefs, but it also expands on the society of the werewolves. It explains the difference between different types of wolves, what's up with the Khan, as well as the importance of wolfsbane within the kingdom. This is important because in the story, Luca and Louis are actually active members of Wolfsbane, so they're very loyal to this order. In the special, we discovered that the reason why they led the pack to Maruhama was because they knew the Wolfsbane had a base there, so they wanted to see if they could find survivors. This is actually a source of tension because the twins seem more loyal to the order than to the pack. Khan reminds them they are a family now, so whatever burden they carry, the rest can carry along with them. This experience eventually makes them bond even more because this is the moment they finally understand that they're all in this together, High School Musical style. As a pack, they are a family, and a family shares both happiness and sorrow. They always have each other's back, and they never leave people behind. So now that they got that out of the way, they can finally enjoy the trip like the vacation it was supposed to be. Like we see in Aoarashi, the pack chills in the abandoned base, they have fun in the pool, and eventually they enjoy the light festival watching the fireworks and eating snacks. After Aoarashi, the pack canonically goes back to Graville, but they eventually decide to leave for good to protect the village from future vampire attacks. On September 3rd, 2000, the pack says goodbye to the inn and prepares to leave, but Mika catches them right on time. Khan tells her to take care of Giri and his mom, both buried at the Graville cemetery, after which they bid farewell and leave the town to go find happiness. This brings us to the next chapter of the special, which is set a month after their departure. This is the episode dedicated to the fall, and even if it doesn't have a specific video associated to it, I personally think that the closest one might actually be Jukoya, which has the same setting. In the episode, we discovered that after leaving Graville, the pack settles in Kaelin, a port city 3 hours away by boat. Kan has found a job as a barista in a cafe. Najak works as a security guard. Luke and Louis work as contractors, while the others seem to be still in school. As always, Tal is going through it, this time because he misses Mika. He tries to make marron glacés because they remind him of her, but he ends up making a mess, and this makes him even angrier. Anyway, for the most part, life in Kaling seems pretty chill. They're very happy there, and on their first full moon out of Graville, they decide to go camping in the woods to experience their transformation as freely as possible. Back in Graville, they had to hide. It wasn't a good experience at all, but now they can transform without worries and enjoy the full moon together as a pack. This applies for all but for Kan, who doesn't transform under the moon. Don't forget, the other members are Lugarus, but he's a lycanthrope. He's a descendant of Varger himself, so he's not subjected to the same transformation. At this point of the story, he doesn't even know it yet, because he will discover it 20 years from now, but we know it because we already saw that part of the story back in the Blood Altar. So, while the pack is running around and howling to the moon, Kan actually writes a letter to Mika. He tells her where they are, what they're doing, he tells her that they're happy now, but at the end he lets it slip that he misses her and that he wishes Mika could be there with them. Kan puts the letter in an envelope, but then he decides to burn it, thus saying goodbye to his dear friend for good. This brings us to winter, which is covered by the last 2 chapters of the special. The events that take place in this season are the ones that we see in Yukiakari, the song that concludes the 4-season series. At this point, 3 months have passed since they left Graville, but no matter where they went, they couldn't find any other werewolf. They might have chosen to live among humans, but this absence makes them feel lonely, so Kan decides to lead them on a quest to find more about their roots. As we also see in the video, he follows the information that he found in his mother's diary. As we also saw in the Grey City, Kan's human mom found him in the field north of Graville. His biological werewolf mom brought him to safety after their entire tribe was wiped out by vampires. The wolf mom eventually succumbed to her injuries, but before dying she begged a woman who was just walking by to please take care of her baby. The woman had found them just in time, almost by destiny, so she decided to honor her request and raise the child as her own. In the diary, Kan discovers that he was found in the homeland of the lycanthropes, so he decided to bring the pack there to look for fellow wolves and relieve the anxiety. Thing is that Kan's wish comes through in the worst possible way, because when they get there they do indeed find a wolf, but a very agitated one. As we also see in the video, Ruslan, Arua's character, ends up getting attacked by the wolf. Since it's against the law of the wolves to harm their own kind, Kan tries to reason with the stranger, but this wolf is too upset. He calls them traitors, he tells them that they have abandoned their own kind. Something is sketchy here. They have no idea what's he talking about, but the wolf is being aggressive because he's scared. In the comic we also see that he only has one eye, so he was injured before, and whoever did that might be the wolf that possibly betrayed their own kind. Now this is just my opinion, because we still don't know what's he referring to here, but my theory is that this wolf was actually one of the wolves captured by Dardan's werewolf trafficking ring. That's the operation that the wolf pack and the vampire brothers discover in the Blood Altar, the same one that will capture Man, Camille and Ruslan, and that the gang will disrupt in the events also portrayed in Naipen's Future Perfect. Even if the Blood Altar takes place 20 years in the future compared to this situation, we know that Dardan had been doing that for years at that point. Not only that, in the web novel they also revealed that some werewolves betrayed their own kind to capture wolves on behalf of the vampires, so it kinda fits. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think that the wolf calling them traitors could be a clue that he was betrayed by some of his own kind and captured to be trafficked. It's possible that he attacked Ruslan because he mistook him for one of the traitors, and when the rest of the pack joined, he got even more scared and upset. Despite Kan's attempt at reasoning with him, the wolf backs away and ends up falling down a cliff to his death. That was the first wolf they ever met outside of the pack, but now he's dead, and Kan blames himself for it and Ruslan's injury. The trip he made to fix his anxiety made it even worse, so he leaves to actually find his roots. As we also see in the video, he ends up finding a structure with an altar right in the middle. That's the same location where the ritual of the blue flower took place. Again, go watch my video about the priestess oath to know more about it, but basically this was the place where Kan officially became a Kan. The ritual is meant to pass down the name and the power it represents, and it was during this ceremony that the vampires attacked and ended everyone. Kan was saved by his mother, who died right after the human mom found them, but Kan was so little and traumatized that he forgot all about it. Now that he found the place again, however, memories of the past start rushing back, and he's overcome by grief. The roots that he was looking for don't exist anymore. His people are gone, and what's left of their tribe is ruins and scars. As the only survivor, Kan wonders if he's even worthy of being an alpha, but this is when the pack finally finds him. Ruslan is the first to comfort him, showing that he has no need to feel guilty about his injury. When he hugs him, his heartbeat gives him hope, and when the pack surrounds him, Khan finally has a revelation. Even if the past is gone and that root has been destroyed, they still have each other. As long as they stay together, they can be each other's root, they can endure, they can resist. The vampires and traitors that wanted them gone have failed because they still exist. They're still alive, and that alone is a reason for hope. The year that started with loneliness, death, and hopelessness ends with a newfound family that moves together towards a new spring. The special, however, is not over yet, because in the final chapter we have a time skip of 10 years that actually matches Yukiakari post-credit scene. 10 years after leaving Graville, the pack comes back to visit the graves of Giri and Khan's mom. They're there to thank them and pay their respects before leaving for yet another adventure, but as the pack gets in the van to leave, Khan has one last goodbye to actually make. As we discover in the video, he sees a woman, and despite all those years he recognizes her right away. It's Mika, who is now a full adult. In the special we see that she got married and had a baby, and even if he doesn't approach her, Khan hopes that she found her happiness just like he found his. Now when Khan gets back in the van, he actually gives something to Najak which somebody told him to give him. This part is a bit unclear because we don't know who gave him what, but we do see where the pack is heading next. The boys are about to go on a plane to Yerasa, a new location in the Dark Moon universe, which will also be the setting of a new installment called Dark Moon the Witch of Yerasa. The video for Deer Hunter actually portrays events that will take place in this upcoming part of the story, and even if for now we know next to nothing about it, there are already some clues that we can take a look at. For one, along with the ticket, we also see a business card with a logo that says Xolotl Semper Lunaris. Semper Lunaris is a Latin phrase that means always lunar, and in this case it's referring to Xolotl, who is a dog-headed god from Aztec mythology. Xolotl is the god of lightning, fire and death. He's a protector of humanity, but is also a god associated to twins, monsters, deformities and misfortune. His main role is to guide the souls of the dead through the 9 levels of the Aztec underworld, but he also protects the sun from the dangers of this underworld every time it sets at night. Up until now we have no idea how Xolotl will connect to Dark Moon. This is a completely new entity that wasn't even mentioned in the mythology so far, so for now it's anybody's guess. If it's going to be anything like Vargar, it's very possible that the story will feature a fictionalized version of the god that has very little to do with the original. In reality, Vargar is a type of wolf from Norse mythology associated to Ragnarok, the Norse version of the apocalypse, but in Dark Moon is a much more benevolent god. It's very likely that if they're introducing a new deity or a new religion with Xolotl, they will only be loosely inspired by the original mythology, and the clue in the card kind of confirms this already, to be honest. In Aztec mythology, Xolotl is associated to the sun. From what I could find, he has nothing to do with the moon. Yet the card says Xolotl always lunar, so we're already diverting from the source material. So far the only thing that we know for sure is that they're going to a place called Yerasa, and in Yerasa there is a witch. As I already mentioned in my video on Princess Odd though, one additional clue might actually be found in Deer Hunter, which is based on this new installment. In the video we see that the boys are in their hunter era as they hide in the woods and practice archery. Major focus is on Arua this time, on Ruslan, and for good reason. On his neck we can see the injury that he got back in Yukiakari, so when the wolf attacked him back in the winter of 2000. The scar confirms that the events of Deer Hunter take place after the Grey City and the 4-season series, which is exactly what they tell us at the end of Yukiakari, like from Graville that then move on to Yerasa. And yet as the video continues, something strange happens, because we go from them being dressed in modern clothing to them wearing hunter outfits which are more fantasy oriented. These outfits look very similar to the ones they are wearing in the teaser at the end of the Grey City, the one foreshadowing the new series. In both cases they are wearing similar outfits, in both cases they are in the desert, and in both cases we also see snow, signaling a change of location and possibly even a change of timeline. In the preview, in fact, at least part of the events take place 1,000 years ago during the Kingdom of Vargar. This is the time where Naipen were still humans for the most part, or maybe newly turned. It's back when Sua was still Selen, when Dardan was still around, and in the teaser we see a new character with a blindfold on being attacked in the snow by wolf-like creatures. In this instance, she's seemingly saved by a man with black hair called Razir, and when the same woman meets Najak in the desert, she identifies him as this man. Now, at this point it's unclear when this confrontation in the desert is taking place. If we follow the chronological order, then this would be set in 2010 in Yerasa, 10 years after leaving Graville, with Arua still having the scar he got in 2000, and this new character recognizing Najak as Razir 1,000 years after the events of the Kingdom of Vargar. We might be dealing with a reincarnation concept perhaps, like the one we saw with Selen and Sua, and this would fit nicely with the timeline we already established. If on the contrary the entire preview is set 1000 years ago, however, we might have some time traveling on our hands, like I was mentioning back in my Priestess Oath video. If the scene in the desert is also set 1000 years ago, then things get trickier because in the video Aru has the scar in the desert as well. If that scene is set in the past, it will not be a matter of reincarnation because Ruslan got the scar in 2000. It will neither be a memory nor a flashback, but rather the bug straight up going back in time to when the Kingdom of Vargr still existed. Now, so far this is 100% just a theory, so we'll have to wait for the release of The Witch of Yerasa and Going Blind to know some more. In the concept photos for Going Blind, the outfits still suggest we are in modern day, but the blindness aspect of the title also fits with the blindfolded character from 1000 years ago. Again, at the time I'm recording this, we just don't know anything for sure. It could be a coincidence, or it could be a legit connection. We could be dealing with reincarnation, time travel, or maybe something else entirely. When we discover it, I'll make sure to let you know. In the meantime though, let me know your theories in the comments down below. I recently opened a new channel about history, mystery and literature, so if you want to hear me yap some more, the link is in the description down below. I'm also working on some videos about vampires and werewolves in history and literature, so look forward to that over there. Links to my merch are also down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching guys, I'll see you next time, bye bye!